So what religion was Jesus?
All right, let's see it.
You might say he's a Christian. Then someone would correct you and say, actually, there were no Christians yet. He was Jewish. But the real truth is he wasn't, because he argued with the Jewish leadership.
So, three concerns here. The first has to do with this notion that arguing with Jewish leadership means that Jesus isn't Jewish. I am pretty confident that would make every last person I know who is Jewish laugh out loud and ask if this content creator has ever known a Jewish person or ever studied Judaism. Because the Judaism of Jesus' day was overwhelmingly characterized by arguments about and arguments with whoever was in charge of some aspect of Judaism. And that brings up the second concern. What precisely Jewishness was in Jesus' day is not easy to nail down, and there has been a lot of debate over what it means to be Jewish. So, for instance, is it a geographic designation? Is it a genealogical designation? Is it an ethnic or a cultural designation? Or is it a religious designation? There are a lot of different ideas about what exactly the Greek term that is used in this time period in places like Josephus and elsewhere, Judaismos, how exactly should we understand that? A couple of good books you can look at for this. Shai Cohen's The Beginnings of Jewishness. This is from 99, over 25 years ago, but it's still an instructive discussion. More recently, Religion or Ethnicity, Jewish Identities in Evolution, which talks about contemporary Judaism, but also talks about ancient Judaism as well. And probably the least likely thing that it was a religion, because what we understand by the term religion didn't really exist in this time period. In fact, it is an innovation of the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment. And if you would like a good discussion on why what we understand by religion is a modern category, I would start with Brent Nongbri's Before Religion, A History of a Modern Concept. This is probably the most accessible discussion. Chapter 2 of Kavanaugh's The Myth of Religious Violence is also very good. Barton and Boyarin have a wonderful book, Imagine No Religion, How Modern Abstractions Hide Ancient Realities. There are a lot of other texts that establish the current scholarly consensus that what we understand by the term religion didn't really exist in the ancient world. And that's not to say the constituent elements weren't there. It's to say that they didn't organize it all under this conceptual package that matches what we understand today. Just like you had throwing things, catching things, running, tackling, kicking in the ancient world, but you absolutely didn't have football, because they didn't organize those constituent elements the way we organize it now under that rubric. So they had the constituent elements of religion, but they did not have that boundary or that category. And I have my own discussion on this. If you go to my link tree in my bio, there is a draft of a paper just entitled Religion. This was going to be chapter 2 of my dissertation, but I pulled it out because it didn't really fit the flow of the discussion. But that discusses how the concept of religion came about, why it doesn't fit the ancient world, and also how scholars use and misuse the concept today. So you can go look at that if you would like a rather technical but very detailed discussion of what I mean when I say the concept of religion is a modern invention and didn't really exist in the ancient world. So this is all to kind of muddy the waters and say even identifying Jesus as Jewish is problematic. But let's see what else this content creator has to say.
What Jesus really was an Essene.
Okay, so two more concerns. First, an Essene was a Jewish person. We know what we know about the Essenes overwhelmingly because of Josephus' description of them as one of the three main schools of philosophy of Judaism, or the Judeans if you prefer the geographic translation of Judaismos. And we can go to Josephus' Judean War, Book 2, Chapter 8, Paragraph 2. This is from Mason's phenomenal translation. For three forms of philosophy are pursued among the Judeans, and Mason prefers Judeans, but you could also translate this Jewish people. The members of one are Pharisees, of another Sadducees, and the third school, who certainly are reputed to cultivate seriousness, are called Essenes. So the first issue is that Essenes are Jewish. The second issue is that the data don't support the conclusion that Jesus was an Essene. This is an idea that pops up in the 19th century and really gained steam in the middle of the 20th century with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, because suddenly we had the literature of a group that most scholars identify as Essenes. We had a lot more details, and there are some resonances between the kind of dualism that frequently pops up in the rhetoric of the New Testament and the kind of dualism that we see in the literature of the Essenes. But despite those resonances and the conflict with Jewish leadership that was so characteristic of so many Jewish groups in this time period, there are very few scholars at all today who would argue that Jesus was an Essene. That's just not a conclusion that's supported by the data.
But I don't think people are ready for that conversation.
Well, this content creator missed the boat on riding the wave of scholarly enthusiasm for this theory into the public consciousness by many decades. That theory had its day and is overwhelmingly rejected by scholars today. There's not a good case to make that Jesus was an Essene, but even if he was, that would still make him Jewish, at least to the degree we can think of Judaism as a religious identity existing in the ancient world, which we probably shouldn't. And the fit for this video has been Wolverine in his correct costume.